It's another edition of Time About the Movies, and today we're taking a look at the movies of March 5th, 1993. We've got 7 movies to look at today, so we don't have a whole lot of time to fool around. Let's just jump on into it, and we'll start off with the biggest new release of the weekend, and that is Robert De Niro, Uma Thurman, and Bill Murray in Mad Dog and Glory. This is one of the more odder movies that I've ever seen. Like, this is a movie that, just from that trailer alone, you can kind of tell that there's something wrong with the casting in this. Like, the character that Robert De Niro plays, you would think this would be something more along the lines of what Bill Murray would play in a typical movie like this, with Robert De Niro playing more the Murray character. I mean, it's kind of hard not to see that at first, and that was my first indication when I saw this movie. And I really saw this movie because I never even heard about it. I saw a video for it in a uh, resale shop. It's about maybe about 20 years ago, almost 20 years ago, and I never even heard of this movie. And by that point, I knew most of Bill Murray's movies that he'd made up to that point. I think it was around 2005, I think. And I never even heard of this movie, and I saw it at an outlet store a couple years after that, and I figured, you know what? It's got Robert De Niro, it's got Uma Thurman, it's got Bill Murray in it. I keep wanting to say Bill Pullman for some reason. I don't know why. Bill Murray. Good lord. But I like Bill Murray a lot, and I've seen most of his movies, and I figure, you know what? Why not check this out? And honestly, it is a pretty decent movie overall. I don't think it's perfect all the way through, but I do like this idea that Robert De Niro and Bill Murray are playing these characters that are very much against type. Because like I said before, this would be easy. The roles could easily have switched around, and I think it would have worked for the most part. But for what we get here, I think it's pretty well done. I like the chemistry between De Niro and Thurman. I like Bill Murray playing this role that's kind of outside of his normal stick. You also have David Caruso in here, Mike Starr, Kathy Baker, Richard Belzer has a cameo in here. It's written by Richard Price, who also wrote The Color of Money, which was also directed by Martin Scorsese. He also wrote Bad. He also wrote Sea of Love. We've talked about some of his work before. This is John McNaughton, who was best known for directing Henry Portrait of a Serial Killer, which we've also talked about on this show. But more notably, he would later go on to direct Wild Things, which was a cult hit when that came out in '98. Also starred Bill Murray too. Yeah, like I said, the movie overall works pretty well. I think it overall is very enjoyable. I will say though, I think the ending is a little bit. I don't think the ending works as well as I think they wanted it to, and I'm reading about this movie later on, and I found out that Universal actually test screened the film, and they had a different ending altogether. It was written that Robert De Niro and Bill Murray's character would fight, and Bill Murray's character would dominate over De Niro's, and then De Niro's one punch did no damage to him, but did serve to prompt Milo to realize that Gloria was not worth fighting for. Gloria is, of course, played by Uma Thurman. And it was reshot because of response to audience typecasting of De Niro, who they saw as the raging bull that he played more than a decade ago. And those who saw the test screening couldn't accept the fact that De Niro's Wayne was done so poorly against Murray's Milo. So they changed it around so Gloria seemed less manipulative, and Milo was more of a puppet master behind Gloria's actions. In which you have the film here, the final climax here. You have De Niro's character standing up to Milo. After impulsively drawing his gun, he ends up brawling in the streets with him. Gloria intervenes, suspecting that Milo might kill Wayne. And seeing that the two are in love with each other, Milo kind of concedes and makes peace with Wayne and lets Gloria go with no strings attached. And to me, I don't know. I think the original ending for this probably would have been a lot more interesting. But to me, I thought the original ending would have worked a lot better. But I don't hate this new ending either. I just think it kind of feels like there was no real It's like there was no real reason to have a climax at the end of it if that was going to be the end result of it. But like I said, overall, I don't hate this movie. In fact, I do pretty much enjoy it. I think it's a very underrated movie for Bill Murray and De Niro and Thurman. It's a very good film overall. I think it's a very solid film for the most part. I just wish the original ending was put back into here, but other than that, it's just fine for what it is. So, with that said, let's go ahead and move on to the next movie, another comedy with a couple notable names in there. Nicolas Cage and Samuel L. Jackson in Amos and Andrew. So here's another one of those comedies where I don't think they could really decide on what kind of a tone they wanted to set. Um, it's a movie that has a lot of there's a lot of allegories to racism, racial injustice, police brutality, and I think Roger Ebert kind of said it best in his review that the movie needed to be either more innocent about race in America or less innocent. It kind of it doesn't really have a good idea of what kind of a tone it wants to take, and a lot of the humor in here is very much on a level of a sitcom. Like you would see this in like a CBS sitcom or something, but it's a movie, and you're supposed to have a story that works for movie length, but especially in terms of like the comedy too. Like the comedy needs to be more better than an episode of Murphy Brown or something like that. But but yeah, like I said, it's a movie that really doesn't know what kind of a tone it wants to set. Does it want to be? Doesn't what kind of a message does it want to send? And it just doesn't work as a whole. It's a movie that I think really wastes a pretty solid cast over here. Not only have Nicolas Cage and Samuel L. Jackson, but you've got Dabney Coleman, Brad Dourif, Michael Lerner, Giancarlo Esposito, Tracy Walter, Ron Taylor. Just a great cast overall. But I think the story, the tone, the writing just really doesn't work on a whole lot of levels, and it really wastes a lot of the talent that the people in here have. It's a shame too because this could be a really funny movie if the writing was better and the comedy was much better, and they had the right tone they wanted to set. But it just doesn't work overall. It's a movie that's just kind of like it's there. It feels like a bad sitcom, and it's just not really enjoyable on many levels. It's a movie that is really largely forgettable. It's a shame too because there is potential there, but it's just not there overall. It's a movie that I saw once and it was just like, yeah, I'm never gonna watch this again. This is not a very good movie. So that's Amos and Andrew. Let's go ahead and move on to the next movie that we have here, and that is Best of the Best 2. Well, I'll give it this. It's not like the last movie, which was a straight-up knockoff of The Karate Kid. I actually did look at the first movie back in the November 10th, 1989 episode. I'll go ahead and put a link to that in the corner there so you can go check that out. Or this corner, I should say. I always keep forgetting that this is mirrored from where I'm looking at the camera right now, so I gotta remember that. I need to remember that one day, but this is the corner you go to see that video. But, I'll give it this. Like I said before, it's not the same. It's not a knockoff of The Karate Kid, but at the same time, it ain't really all that good either. It's a movie that's just kind of like it really doesn't know what it actually wants to do. It's just like it's a movie that's kind of like let's just beat each other up for no reason whatsoever. I couldn't even tell you who was supposed to be the main characters in this movie. That's how much this movie was so confusing to me. Like, even though four of the characters from the original film are back in this one, and like I said, nothing about it makes any sense. It's just people fighting each other for no real reason except to because we need to make another movie. Because the first movie wasn't even that big of a success, if I remember correctly. But apparently it was. So they made a sequel to it, and it didn't end up playing out very well. And I saw it, and I was not a big fan of it. And I really don't have anything else to say about it because I saw it a long time ago, and I don't really want to see it again. Really, it's a movie that's honestly more forgettable than the first movie, even though it's not. It's one of those weird things where it kind of improves on the first movie, and yet it's still worse than the first movie. It's just like it's a weird thing, and yeah, that's pretty much all I got to say about this one because It's Best of the Best 2, and I mean, you pretty much go in there knowing what you're gonna get, but overall, yeah, it's pretty much a mess of a movie. So. With that said, let's go ahead and move on to the next movie, and that is Swing Kids. Yeah, here's another movie that I really don't know what the hell they were trying to go for here. My first thought was maybe because Newsies became such a cult hit after that came out the year before, this was going to be try to be the next musical they would try to launch into the next big thing, but apparently it's nothing like that because holy crap, that trailer was much more dramatic than I thought it was going to be. But got some notable names in there: Christian Bale, Frank Whaley, again Barbara Hershey, Kenneth Branagh, Noah Wiley from ER, and the director Thomas Carter actually had a pretty good career after this movie came out, with some directing movies like Metro, Save the Last Dance, and Coach Carter. But yeah, I really don't know how to take this movie. Um, it's a weird movie. I think it's a movie that's pl- trying to plead with the Nazis back then, but at the same time trying to discount them as villains, simplistic villains. But it's a really hard movie to digest. It's a movie that's really hard to figure out. Again, it's kind of like Amos and Andrew. It's kind of hard to figure out what's the tone they're trying to set here. Are they trying to be a crowd pleasing movie, or are they trying to be a movie that's more sincere and more serious? But it really can't decide which one it wants to do. Plus, it doesn't help that the script writing seems really lackluster, and it goes way too hard on the dramatics. Like, I feel like this is the movie they're trying to push for Oscar consideration, an Oscar baitish type film, and it just doesn't really have that spark that I think they were looking for. It looks visually nice, and again, you got a pretty solid cast overall in this, but yeah, overall, this was a dud of a movie. It's a movie that was largely forgotten, and for good reason. It's just one of those movies that's just kind of like, yeah, it really didn't come together as well as I thought they wanted to. Also, when you hear Christian Bale say "swing Heil," it's just like, okay, I'm done. There's no coming back from that. So, anyway, that's Swing Kids. Let's go ahead and move on to the next movie that we have here, and that is Shadow of the Wolf. I mean, it's obviously knocking off Dances with Wolves and also Last of the Mohicans. Basically, Lou Diamond Phillips plays this Inuit who's been isolated from his fellow Inuits after he was disowned by his father, and he's for challenging the latter's chosen wife. Brown is a white man who comes to do business in the territory, and Lou Diamond Phillips' character is forced to go on the run after a dramatic altercation with him and flees from the pursuing police, impacting the stability of his community. And I mean, it looks visually pleasing, but I really don't know what this movie is trying to be other than just a knockoff of Dances with Wolves or The Last of the Mohicans. It felt like the studio that was making this movie, just on that trailer alone, was trying to make this the next grand epic, and it was just like, yeah, there's nothing in here that really says that this is going to come out the way you think it's going to come out. But I haven't seen it. I can't really comment on it too much, but I could just go off of the trailer there. But like I said, it looks visually pleasing, but other than that, it's just kind of like, yeah, I think their priorities weren't properly set in this one. So that's Shadow of the Wolf. So let's go ahead and move on to the next movie that we have here, and that is Rich in Love. So basically, you're following this family through the summer, trying to get their lives together, which is complicated when the oldest daughter of the family moves back home with a new husband and a baby on the way. And I guess one of the family members has mixed feelings, and while reminiscent about their mother, they're talking about trying to abort Lucille when she's pregnant, and notices and the patriarch of the family, played by Albert Finney, notices his daughter's in new, different ways now that his wife is gone and he's no longer working. And everything changes for Lucille, played by Catherine Erb from D2 The Mighty Ducks, most notably known for starring in Law & Order Criminal Intent, as she comes of age and learns about the family in new ways. I haven't seen this movie, as you can tell. I'm reading the synopsis off of Wikipedia, but compared to some of Bruce Barre's first movies he made after Driving Miss Daisy, this one doesn't look that bad, quite honestly. It's got positive reviews, so I mean, maybe there is something there with this one that kind of makes it work, but it's not one that I really want to rush out to see. It's got a good cast overall. We talked about Albert Finney and Catherine Erb, Geo Clayburgh's in this, Kyle MacLachlan, Piper Laurie, Ethan Hawke, Alfre Woodard. A pretty good cast overall. Looks pretty decent, but it's not something I'm going to rush out to see. But maybe one day I might check it out. I'm definitely kind of curious about it. So that's Witch in Love. Now let's get on to the last movie that we have here this week, and that is The Stolen Children. So as that trailer kind of indicates, you're following the story of a policeman who has an order to take two children from Milan to Sicily to an orphanage. Their mother has been arrested by forcing Rosetta to work as a prostitute, and first their relationship between everybody is tough, but it relaxes, so they become temporary friends. Again, I haven't seen this one, but I mean, it's got some praise around it. It was an Italian entry for the foreign language film category in '92 at the Oscars, so it's got to be good for something. But I mean, it looks like it could be decent. It looks like it's visually shot. It looks like it has an impressive and an engaging story to really get invested in. And overall, it could be something worth enjoyable. It's again, like with Witch in Love, it's not something I'm going to rush out to see, but my interest is definitely piqued. So there you go, the Stolen Children. And so on that note, we wrap up another edition of Time About the Movies. The next time we meet, we'll look at 5 new films, including Chris Rock's first feature film debut, leading film debut, I should say, CB4. We also have Fire in the Sky. We also have Reese Witherspoon in one of her early film roles, A Far Off Place, which was also notable for having the last Roger Rabbit theatrical short, Trail Mix-Up. But we also have Ethan Frome and also When the Party's Over. So 5 movies overall to look at, and we'll definitely take a look at those on the next episode. But until then, thank you very much for watching, and if you want to see more videos like this, please hit the playlist on the next page, check out the previous episode, and I'll see you guys tomorrow for another episode. So thank you for watching, I'll see you next time, and until then, as always, take care.